They like to control things by controlling information, and now you can't do that anymore. Everything is shifting. There's a resistance to change. This resistance to change is hugely difficult and important. AI, if you give people access, it democratizes knowledge. Knowledge is power.
Welcome back to the second season of Rules Don't Apply, in partnership with our friends at South by Southwest Sydney. Once again, we're bringing raw, unfiltered conversations with the thinkers and troublemakers, rewriting what success looks like. Because the future doesn't belong to those who play it safe. It belongs to those who play it differently. Ladies and gentlemen of South by Southwest, if you are in the gallery, come on over. We have an exceptionally special episode of Rules Don't Apply.
Exceptionally special.
Exceptionally special. I have the great privilege of being joined by Sir
It is a really
Martin
great
Sorrell.
privilege.
For those of you who have been living under a rock, Sir Martin Sorrell is not just a titan of industry, he in fact built an industry. He is best known as the founder and long-time CEO of WPP, having transformed what was a small wire basket manufacturer into the largest advertising and marketing services group globally. And if that wasn't enough, in his 70s, while others might be writing memoirs, Sir Martin launched S4 Capital, his second meteorically successful empire. He has been knighted. Third successful empire.
You missed out Saatchi's.
And so
it wasn't me, but I mean it was.
You were still at the helm.
It was not the helm. It was the CFO, the boring financial officer.
Counting.
The bean counting. Yes, but as Jeremy Bullmore said, the more beans I had to count, the more I liked it.
He has been knighted for his services to business, built billions in value for the organisations he has led, and redefined what leadership looks like in a relentlessly changing world. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, Sir Martin, if I were to strip the titles and the accolades and take you out to dinner,
yes,
how would you introduce yourself at a dinner party?
Martin.
And Martin, what do you do for a crust?
Very little, actually.
Yeah.
No, listen, I try and keep myself occupied.
Yep.
Probably is the truth. And our industry is really an interesting industry. I was saying to a client earlier, if you looked at the media portfolios that we built at Saatchi's, that we built at WPP, and we're building in a different way at S4 with Monks, you sort of get a view of what's happening in the world, both geographically and technologically. I mean, it was funny, we were talking about it this morning. I remember many years ago we thought about we actually made a presentation to BlackRock, I think it was, that we should have an ETF or we should have a fund based on
tracking media,
where we were putting the media. Because if you think about it, the rise of Google, the rise of Meta, the rise of Amazon, the rise of Alibaba, because we had a big business in China, Tencent, ByteDance, all of those companies, Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Adobe, Oracle, Salesforce, all of those companies you could see, if you looked at where the money was going in the media portfolios, you saw the rise of traditional TV, the rise of the platforms, the rise of the smartphone, the rise of AI. I mean, you see it all happening. So I would say it's really interesting. My dad said, as I said on stage just a few minutes ago, find an industry you enjoy and a company in it that you enjoy within it. And I think that what he said was true. I mean, you can see in our industry all the geographical changes taking place and all the tech changes.
What are the next big tectonic shifts in that space that you think are going to play out?
In technology?
Yeah, in media.
Well, obviously AI is one, but I think the one that's coming down the pike that people have not spent enough time thinking about is quantum. So when I was at Zeitgeist in US a week ago, which was in Montecito, in Meganland in Montecito, we got a look in Santa Barbara. Google have their quantum lab, or one of them.
Yep.
And we got to look around that, and it's incredible what they're doing.
Scary.
Yeah, it's scary is the right word.
Yep.
On steroids. And when you see that, and you hear about what the potential is, it dwarfs what we're seeing with AI. So, and our industry will be in the forefront of what's happening with quantum too, which is sort of interesting. So I think we were a good bellwether for what's happening, and then geographically you see it as well.
And looking at that bellwether, What are some of the industry truths, these conventional wisdoms that you believe are dangerously outdated now?
Well, what is it? I mean, everything is shifting. There's a resistance to change. I mean, if you look at, I don't know whether these are industry truths that are outdated, but this resistance to change is hugely difficult and important. The other thing that is that people operate in silos, particularly at the top of organizations. They like to control things by controlling information. And now you can't do that anymore. I mean, AI, if you give people access, it democratizes knowledge. Knowledge is power. Knowledge gives you the ability to control a silo or a vertical. If you free it up, like when I said on stage, Jensen Wang has done with 51 direct reports. I mean, you go to McKinsey, I mean, if the growth distillery was asked for what is the optimum management span, I'm sure the growth distillery say 12 or 13 people at max. You can't manage more. Jensen manages 51 apparently. How does he do it? And I think part of the reason, maybe not the whole reason, part of the reason is because knowledge has been disseminated through the organization. And the other thing is that the deeper you go inside an organization, the more people are willing to share. The higher up you go, I think the more people, unless you find those people who are the exceptional people, who are builders and growers and share.
You've led me to my next question, which is, what do you look for in your next generation of exceptional leaders?
I think the people inside organizations that work, that are outstandingly successful and can sublimate their egos or whatever the right way of putting it, such that they listen, share, encourage people to work together. I mean, I've been involved in the industry now for whatever it is, 50 years. It continues to amaze me how uncooperative and insular people can be when to solve a problem and to win is much easier if you engage people, okay? And we're not good at listening. We're always on transmit. And I think that's a huge issue too.
On the other side of the coin, what do we think good leadership looks like that you think is a red flag for someone that's going to hold a business back from growth?
Well, you know, it's very difficult because if you have very good people who are good and can build and don't share, you end up, you know, this gets into controversial stuff, but you know, if I think about LVMH for a moment, right? They have 76 maisons, and it's an outstandingly successful company, but it is run as 76
individual silos,
separate brands, and they obviously compete with one another in some dimension, not all dimensions. That's a multi-brand model. If you look at the holding companies, they're all moving towards where we are with Monks, which is a unitary brand, right? I mean, we used to have, when I was at Saatchi's, we had competing brands. At WPP, we had competing brands. You know, we had, for example, JWT had Unilever, Ogilvy had Unilever, so it made sense to be part of the same group. Y&R had Colgate, and Grey had Procter. Just recently, for some reason that completely defeats me, they've stuck Grey underneath Ogilvy. Well, that signals to me that they must have lost all the Procter business, because there's no way that Procter is going to
one within the house
have
the other,
Ogilvy Unilever management looking after a Procter agency, or at least I think that's the case. So I think the models have changed, but you've got to be fair. One of the most, if not the most successful luxury companies in the world, or brands in the world, being run as a separate maison of brands. And then with the agency business, we used to be that way around. They're now moving to a one Publicis model, or a one WPP open model, or even Omnicom, right? John Wren, I don't think how can I put this delicately? I don't think
don't
he's
worry about delicacy,
high up in the strategic sort of grade. He's very practical, but he's actually effectively merging the creative agencies quite subtly. He forms Omnicom Advertising Group. Andrew Robertson retires, I guess, because Andrew probably wouldn't report to Troy Ruhanen. He moves Troy in, and then he's creating an advertising group. And then they're acquiring, not merging with IPG. So they'll have a number of brands like McCann and FCB to deal with. So how are they going to manage that? But he's going to bring them together, not the way that WPP did it, which was to issue a press release and slam them all together. Yeah. So it's really interesting in terms of different approaches. Yeah. I mean, the WPP approach, I think, was disastrous. I think to lose well, you're in the branding business, or you understand about brands. Yeah. Why would you jettison JWT, Y&R, Grey, AK? I mean, these are valuable brands, right? And coming back to what we were talking about in terms of people, the interesting thing is they were run by very good people. And the problems that they have were not about consolidation and simplification. They were that the good people who were running those businesses were no longer there. So the key was not mushing them together. The key was to find the best people to run the brand. And once they were strong, bring them together. Not bring them together when they were weak.
Figure out the structure,
I mean, it doesn't work that way.
When you look at the organisations more broadly, what frustrates you most about how businesses are pursuing growth in today's backdrop?
Well, it is the silo. It is the verticality of the business. I mean, the fact that they aren't sharing information and knowledge. As I said on stage, we have 7,000 people around the world who are interacting with clients hopefully on a 24/7 basis, sharing that knowledge that they get, or hoarding it, or even unconsciously hoarding it. Just receiving it and not thinking about
who needs to know.
So if you have a global client leader, our biggest relationship was Google, right? If you have a global client leader on Google and something's happening with Google here in Sydney, there should be a transfer of knowledge about what we pick up here in Sydney that feeds back to Mountain View or San Francisco or Los Angeles.
How do you foster free information flow within organisations like
Well,
Monks?
it's very difficult because people say, if you're managing a company by profit center, and that can be geographic, it can be functional by capability, it can be client. Those are the three dimensions. Even if you have a unitary P&L, you'll want to try and figure out how things are working from a geographic basis, a product basis, or a client basis. So by sort of splitting it up, you create the problem.
Yeah. The accountability burden.
Yeah, and I think the reverse of what most people think. I don't think it's about budgets and incentives. I think it's something up here.
Okay.
I think psychologically, certain people work well together. There are sharers, and then there are people who are hoarders who put their arms around things, and it's very difficult to get people to open up and share, because people like to get the credit. They like to be interviewed by the growth distillery,
said no
or
one.
whatever, and so ego, territory, my revenue, not our revenue. Yep. I mean, you can have this discussion. We had two models. At WPP, we had the earn-out model. At S4, we've employed a sort of a mixed cash and share incentive model. I'm not sure, to be honest, which is the best model and which is more effective you would think the second model would be much more effective. I'm not so sure it is. It's more up here than it is in the pocket or the wallet.
I think that's profound advice for those looking to...
Well, everybody doesn't agree with that, you see. I mean, most people say, you get what you incentivize people for. I'm not sure that is right. I'm not sure that people naturally think about, if they have a large shareholding in the company, that it's automatic that they think about the whole. They still, for whatever reason, want to put their arms around it.
Is that somewhere that you've landed recently? If you go back to the WPP days versus the S4?
No, I think, with the earn-out thing, we always used to say, when we acquired a business, the brands would love to consolidate that business into their business because they would see some opportunity with clients, geographic, whatever it happened to be, capability. So they'd always want to do it. And we would always say, we used to do 5-year earn-outs. And they would say, we'll integrate it. And of course, during the period of the earn-out, it was never integrated, right? People never brought it together, which is what they should have used the 5 years, and we should have used the 5 years, not
to
just
integrate.
them. To integrate.
Yeah.
But they didn't do it. And then there was always the problem at the end of the earn-out, business might drop dead as a result of it. Part of it was also because the legal side of it, you'd always put in place a contract that would make it watertight, because if you had an earn-out and there was a considerable amount of money resting on the profitability, quite understandably, the owner of the business or the ex-owner of the business would want to maintain some protection. So I'm not sure what the best system is, other than to say to you, and this is really heresy, organic growth is always better. It's always stronger. I mean, I don't know what you advise your clients when they come to you and say, what do you think about that? But organic growth is always stronger. Just the problem is it takes longer.
And often less clarity in your ability to measure it immediately.
No, there's nothing more satisfying, I think, for an agency than winning a piece of business
on its own merits.
And then getting more business because you've done a good job, or because you've developed an offer which is the right offer and people understand that and clients understand that and they grow with you. I mean, the great thing that we have at Monks is we have big relationships with the major platforms, with the major tech companies, and for a company which is only $1 billion of revenue, to have such big relationships at scale is unusual. Usually you have, $5 million relationships or $10 million relationships, but to have 50, 60, 70, 80 and 100 and hundreds of millions is unusual.
I want to shift gear, and I'd love for the people listening in to get your advice for the next generation of senior advertising executives and leaders. What advice would you give to someone who wants to challenge the system that they're inheriting? You've spoken about a lot of your frustrations, but they perceive that they don't yet have the power to do so.
Well, it's a bit like what my dad said. You find an industry, find a company in it that you enjoy, build a reputation. If you fancy doing something on your own, do it. I mean, he actually interestingly thought about life being from 20 to 60, and the midpoint was 40, and that's how he sectioned it off. He said, 40 is the dangerous age, or used to be. I think 30 is the new 40. Jeremy Bullmore said, I remember always, it was the great, I still think is the best writer that I've ever come across in our industry. He used to say we should put a little warning sign on people's computers when they were 3 months from their 40th birthday, because that's when you became sort of most discontented. But no, look, I think if you ground yourself and you build your knowledge, you build your reputation, then if you fancy doing something on your own, if you find it too overburdening being part of an organization, then you go off and try and do something on your own. As to what I would do, the two dimensions that I think people should really think about is where the growth is going to be. Because I agree, Buffett has always said, if good management comes into contact with the bad business always wins. Okay, so I think finding the places in the world where there's growth, which in a digital age, because of the fluidity and because we're much more flexible in terms of geography than we've, and working methods and everything, 3-day week and whatever, and distance working. So I think you have much more flexibility now. So finding the geography and then finding the technological underpinning to that. So, you thinking about the world, if I was coming out of university, I would think about, I mean, America will continue to be one of the top two economies. You know, I'd look at, obviously, the major markets in Asia. I'd look at South America. Those would be where, Middle East maybe.
It's funny you've given a geographic answer to where you'd place your bets. I'm curious, from an industrial perspective.
You would pick the technology or the technological advance in those particular territories.
In that order, you'd go geography and then industrial?
Yes, I think probably you would. If you're thinking about technology, the two countries that always come up are US and China.
Yeah.
Okay. China is probably difficult. I mean, we were at Iblak, which is the mayor of Shanghai's CEO committee just a few days ago. It's the 37th time that has been convened over 37 years. So you get the mayor and the party secretary. And, you know, one of the things they are concerned about, I think, is after COVID, the exodus of expatriate talent because of the rigor, let me put it like that, with the way that COVID rules were enforced. And they want to attract it back. And of course, with the restrictions that are being put on visas in the US,
you see human capital flows shift.
So the human flows are going to be different. So I think some really interesting things that potentially could happen. But, you know, if I was coming out of school again, I mean, ironically, when I was at Harvard Business School in 1968, which shows you how old I am, it was a Labour government. Jim Callaghan was the Prime Minister. And the marginal rates of tax, the top rate of tax for income tax was 83%. And for unearned income, that was for earned income, for unearned income it was 98%. They were threatening to put on a wealth tax, and, you know, they talk about a wealth tax in our budget in November 24th this year. Wealth tax would take them to 103% of unearned income. The government, this is amazing, the Callaghan government, I think it was Callaghan, either Wilson or Callaghan, sent a guy called David Frost, not the David Frost, but a headhunter, to recruit. There were 7 of us at Harvard Business School graduating in the MBA UK to get us to go back to the UK. So when you think about what's happening in the UK at the moment, you know, non-doms and all that stuff, we're back to where we were, right? Whether there's a Margaret Thatcher-like figure, you know, whether Nigel Farage is Margaret Thatcher in drag, I don't know, but we've been here before. I think this is a bit different, but we have had situations like this before.
So Martin, I want to be respectful of your time. So we have a closing tradition. I'm going to give you 5 quick fire questions.
Oh God, all right.
First thought wins. So Martin, what's one hot take you believe about what's next that no one agrees with?
I know whether nobody agrees with.
Or very few agree with.
Well, quantum. I think people don't focus on quantum.
It's the tiger in the grass.
Yes, I think that's where the huge changes. I mean, AI is. We haven't unleashed the potential of that, and there's a resistance to doing it. But the stuff that quantum will cover is extraordinary. So that is going to be a huge advance.
Dwarf AI, you say. If you look back over your career, what's the most important thing you've let go of?
I've let go of balance. So when I was at business school, there was a guy, this is going to be a long answer, there was a guy called George Cabot Lodge. And George Cabot Lodge was the son of Henry Cabot Lodge. And Henry Cabot Lodge, I think, was Eisenhower's Secretary of State. So the Condoleezza Rice of Eisenhower. And we thought George was a little bit of a... we thought he got there by privilege and nepotism, rather. But he was really very sound. He taught a course called Planning in the Business Environment. It was a compulsory course in the first year, and in order to get an A grade, all you had to do was to reproduce a Venn diagram that he had with 3 circles which interlocked. And 1 circle represented family, 1 business, career, and 1 society. And what he said was, what will determine your life and happiness will being able to intersect those 3, you know, how the degree in which you intersect them. I probably connected 2 of the 3, but not all 3. And it's the people who link those three circles together comprehensively that are, I think, the most satisfied. Maybe they may not be the most successful, by the way, but they would be the most satisfied. So that would be my advice.
Ikigai. What do you want written on your gravestone?
I'm not worried.
I'm not worried.
Just my name and 1945 to X, and I want to be buried with my parents. That's right.
Oh, that's very sweet. What's a rule you wish you hadn't broken?
Well, I think it goes back to the balance thing. I think getting those three things, family, business, society, into full balance.
Bringing in that third circle.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. And if I have regrets, it will be that I didn't manage to do that.
And what question are you most tired of being asked?
What's your leadership style?
Oh,
I hate that.
I shan't be asking that. Sir Martin, thank you so much.
Thank you
for
very
giving
much
us your time.
indeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sir Martin Sorrell.
Thank you. Thanks very much.